seems to be sort of suggesting that worrying that these scandals are driving people away from the church on the one hand, and also failing to engage young people. These are quite strong words from the Pope, some of the strongest we've heard on this topic. What's your reaction to what he's said today? Apologies, you've only got a summary of what he's said, but it seems like he's reacting quite strongly.
Exactly. I do think that these abuse scandals are driving people away from the church, and they should, because it's scandalous behavior. And not only the big problem is not so much that there are bad people doing bad things, because that always happens and will always happen in a way, but it was so badly handled, and it was, people in charge of the Catholic Church look to the institution to protect the institution rather than the people, and that it wasn't turned around for a long time. Now it's turning around, but when it wasn't, it was a scandal. And I think that these reports that come out, like in Germany or Pennsylvania not too long ago, are a good thing, because as Catholics, lay Catholics, we really want this to end. This is just going on and on and on. It's been going on for several decades. We want it to end. We don't want any abuse to happen ever again. We want victims recompensed. We want perpetrators and their enablers to be punished. So we want all that to happen. So these reports are good for us, that everything should come out, and so we can move on. Whilst it's secret, whilst it's not known, we cannot really move on. So in a way, as the Church is the people of God, these things are good. These reports are good. And I think this German report follows a similar pattern to the report, for example, of Pennsylvania, because it covers 70 years, from mid-40s to 2015. And it has this pattern, abuse peaks in the 70s and 80s, and then it starts to decline. And then when rules are put in place, like they were in the United States in 2002 and in the United Kingdom in 2001, the abuse goes to a trickle, down to a trickle, because there are procedures to deal with any allegations, etc. So you can read the Pennsylvania report, which is really horrific tales of abuse. And then you can see that from 2002, there are only 2 cases, and they were reported immediately and dealt with. So from that point of view, we're getting there. Now there are other things that are still work in progress, such as, do we have enough, do we deal with bishops who have not done their job properly well? This seems to be not in place yet. Do we look after victims in the right way? That again needs to be looked into more. But we're getting there. As a Catholic, I see that this is a great scandal, but I see the Church moving in the right direction, so I have hope.
Do you fear, though, that we've had about half a dozen of these reports, whether it's from Chile, Ireland, Germany, Pennsylvania, that this is the tip of an iceberg that is yet to be fully revealed?
Oh, I think there will be many more reports, because, if you think of Pennsylvania, it's 6 dioceses out of 200, so there will be more reports. My hope is that these reports are all done very soon, everywhere, and so we have the child abuse reports. Also, there's another thing that's just come out recently, which is abuse of seminarians, which is, homosexual priest abusing adults. So, but who are in their power, in a way. It's abuse of power, like the Weinstein affair in Hollywood. It's a bit like that. So that also needs to be uncovered and dealt with. But again, I think that it's good that these things are in the open, so we can deal with them. Yes, there will be many more reports. So for a while there'll be a lot of suffering. But I mean, as a Catholic, I think God wants us to suffer for the things that were done wrong, so that we can be more purified, and we can look forward to a time when we don't have any wealth or power, because a lot of this is to do with power. We don't have any wealth or power, and we can move on and witness to the world from poverty, which is really what this Pope is about.
Do you think Pope Francis is doing enough to force more openness on the part of bishops and dioceses around the world to continue to uncover this? Would you like him to put more pressure?
Well, I think he has been surprised by the extent of it. He's been shocked in a way. He told Bono he was completely shocked by the extent of the problem. But early in his pontificate, he set up the Commission for Safeguarding. He set up some people. They've done some work with ups and downs. So I think they're learning. It wasn't all perfect. His response sometimes has been slow. When the Pennsylvania report came out, which showed the same pattern I just said, that we didn't learn anything new about the sociological things, but we didn't learn about the detail, which was horrific. And he said, look, he called all the bishops, the presidents of the bishops' conferences around the world, the top bishop in each country, to come together in February 2019 to the Vatican for a 3-day meeting to really decide what we're going to do as a church, because this needs more action. So could he do more? Perhaps he could do more. The various steps he's taken, I'm happy with. Specific cases, sometimes he hasn't got it right. For example, he went to Chile and he said some things that were not right, and then he came back to Rome and he realized he'd made a mistake, so he apologized and he sent an investigator to write a report on, and there was a very long report, 2,000 pages, from Archbishop Scicluna about the Chilean situation, and then the Pope asked for forgiveness and met with the victims, and all the bishops of Chile have resigned. And he's waiting to see, he's working on it, so to see which ones he will accept. But he sometimes has made mistakes, but he has rectified. So in a way, I'm thinking he's going in the right direction. Could he do better? Probably. But I'm not unhappy how he's dealing with it.
Lastly, specifically on Pope Francis, some have said that his papacy is under threat because of this issue you talk about at the seminaries, and particularly with Cardinal McCarrick and his rehabilitation. Do you see any threat to Pope Francis because of that scandal?
Well, I think that the problem of child abuse is a huge scandal. So it, of course, affects the papacy. Papacy of Benedict was affected, papacy of Francis. So I don't know the future, but of course it's a big thing. It's a big thing, and it's a big black mark. Now, it wasn't one that he created. It was there before. It has been there for a while. He's trying to deal with it. Benedict tried to deal with it and dealt with some aspects of it. Then he resigned because he probably didn't have strength to continue with it. Francis is dealing with it. Will he deal with it enough to make it work, or will it crush him? I don't know. But I mean, there of course there are reports of the Vigano testimony. I don't buy it, all of it. I don't buy, for example, that he rehabilitated ex-cardinal McCarrick. I think that McCarrick was able, unfortunately, to keep acting. He was made a cardinal when the Vatican already knew that he was some sort of predator. He was allowed to retire in glory throughout the pontificate of Benedict. So there are questions to be asked there, but I don't buy the thing of Francis rehabilitating him knowing that he's a predator. I think it's much more complicated than that. But in any case, I agree, it's a very big issue, and we can just wait and see. I hope that Pope Francis is allowed to keep working at it as he has been doing, and he talked about this in Ireland a lot, and he now talked about it in Estonia. So he's obviously got it very much in his heart. He wants to sort it out. In my view, he should be allowed to work at it, and all Catholics should pray that this works. We're all implicated.
And lastly, I wanted to talk about that conference in February, the Bishops' Conference. What would you like to see? The depth of the changes that are needed to the Church. Some people are talking about needing to confront very big, long-standing issues, celibacy of priests, for example, changes that would go to the core of the Catholic Church. Do you think elements like that should be up for discussion in February?
Well, I think they should discuss it in depth, wherever that leads. But personally, on the subject of celibacy, which has been brought up, the two subjects that keep coming up are celibacy and homosexuality, because, in fact, many of the abuse is man on adolescent boy. But I think it's interesting, for example, if you read the John Jay report, which is the most complete study of sexual abuse by clergy, than in the United States in 2004 and reissued in 2011 with new data. How they look at these two issues, and they say, well, look, celibacy in itself is not a cause of abuse, okay? So obviously there is a problem of abusers getting into the priesthood and how did that happen and so on. And also that celibacy is not for everybody and it's a difficult thing. But they studied it in great depth, and I think that should be taken as a sort of scientific study that the cardinals can look at, the bishops can look at. And similarly with homosexuality, yes, a lot of homosexual activity is going on, and that's the church, says that's wrong. But is homosexuality something that leads a person to abuse? And again, the John Jay report said, no, that's not the cause. That is a factor that is there, but is not a cause in that sense. So I think that whatever scientific data is there should be taken into account. We shouldn't just go by impressions. And they should look at everything, of course. Everything should be looked at. Of course, celibacy is not a dogma. It's a discipline of the Catholic Church for priests in the West, but I think it's a great gift for the Church. I think that it's looking in the wrong place to try and change that. There are several other things to do with the formation of people, with the sexual maturity of candidates to the priesthood, and that are very important for the future looking forward. And for the past, the openness and transparency and the fact that everybody who has been involved up to now, whether it's a perpetrator or somebody who's covered up, should face justice. I think that's really important.